It's a drama of politics. What we want is
service delivery.
And that's why we've brought the CEO of the Electricity Sector Association of Kenya, George Aluru, to the studio. George, good morning.
Good morning, Eric.
Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
This is where we fix the nation, one conversation at a time. We want to fix hii mambo ya stima. First of all, tunataka stima throughout 365 days a year, bila blackout. Number 2, tunataka bei ya stima irudi chini. So we can attract those factories that have shut down, they can reopen, and you know, all those things, and you know why. So, but to welcome you, Jano has the day's quote.
I do. Today, the quote is by Malala Yousafzai, who is a Pakistani activist, gained global recognition many years ago, and she was subject to an unfortunate shooting, but survived it. And now she says, when the world is silent, even one voice becomes powerful. How does that resonate with you?
Well, I think what Malala is trying to say is, you know, the Kiswahili word usinyanyapae, don't disabuse or dharau one small voice.
Yeah.
Change begins with just one drop in an ocean. Yeah.
And one voice speaking out on injustices.
Just the one.
Just one.
Yeah. The little bird, the hummingbird.
Right.
Yes,
in the forest. That's a good one.
Yeah.
George, what is this association? Electricity Sector Association of Kenya.
Yes, the Electricity Sector Association of Kenya is an association of private companies. So we are private investors in electricity, both in generation, in transmission, and we also do what we call captive power plants. So it's like solar on top of rooftops. You've seen them in shopping malls, in industries, etc. And a fourth part of what we do is basically look at how the market is evolving, work with government and whichever stakeholder to improve the way the market is run, basically. Yeah.
Okay. Can an individual or a corporate become a member, or how does it work?
Yes, so we have membership of both individuals and corporates, but individuals, it's more people with a long-standing kind of activity on the electricity side, but not necessarily affiliated to a specific company. So this could be like someone who has been in the industry for many years and retired. We still want their knowledge to be part of what we are doing in the association. At the moment, we have about 46 members, and they comprise about, in jargon terms, 1,000 megawatt of what is installed on the grid and also connected to the grid. So connected to the grid, I mean the solar on the rooftops. That's not necessarily selling to Kenya Power, but it is selling directly to some consumer within the facility. So if you combine all these guys, we have about 1 gigawatt of installed capacity. For context, I know that's jargon.
For context and breaking, I know, gigabytes. Now in English, you mean?
In English. In English. In total, the amount of electricity generation capacity that is installed in the country it's 3,800. Let me not use the units, but just it's like 3,800. We call it megawatts, but it's just power. The ability to produce electricity is 3,812, of which 83% of this is on the grid. So this is selling to Kenya Power, which is roughly about 3,000 megawatts installed. We then also import about 200 from Ethiopia, mostly. And then there's 15% that is captive. So this is what I was talking about, the solar that people have installed in their facilities, which also, it roughly accounts to about 550. And then we also have another 1.2% of that number that is off-grid. So this is the Kutulo, Abaswain. I know that name is familiar to people.
Abaswain. Barabara inapita.
Barabara inapita. Na stima pia.
Na stima pia. That's good to know.
So these are what we call the isolated off-grid facilities. So it's like diesel plus solar plus wind being run in a very off-grid place, where the Kenya Power grid doesn't get, but then Kenya Power still runs some generation facilities there. So those ones account for about 1.2% of that 3,800. Of that, Kenyan is about 60%. Then 10% is imported. Then 30% is now from us, the independent power producers. That's now the power on the grid. But the power that is captive, that is mostly private sector. It's 100% private sector.
Maybe we'll stay away from them for just a bit and focus on what's on our grid.
Yeah.
A lot of the cost of our power sometimes is blamed on independent power producers and how much they sell power to Kenya Power for. Why so expensive? No, two economies of scale.
That's economies of scale.
Why is the power from IPP so expensive?
Yeah, you know, I'm tempted to jump on you on the so expensive, but let me just try and explain. There's the cost of power is basically based on the whatever power plant you are running. So in this case, Kenyan has a lot of those hydro dams that were built like really long time ago. So you have already recovered your cost, your investment cost. So you're running basically on O&M, operation and maintenance. So it's a lower level of running. Additionally, they also access very, I would say, more concessional capital than the private sector, because they are backed by the government. So if a bank is looking at giving money to a state agency, they see the government as more kind of less of a risk. So they give you a lower rate. So that builds up. Right. That builds up to comparatively lower cost. But then also what people never or don't get right when they're comparing is you're supposed to compare like a geothermal plant to a geothermal plant. The IPPs, we have wind, we have solar, we have thermal plants. And as I said, on the other side, there's a heavy presence of geothermal and hydro. These tend to be cheaper technologies. We call them base load. As in, at any time in this grid, kuna hizo power plants zenye lazima zirun. And those ones are the ones we call base load. They're the cheapest producers. They're the first to start running. And a lot of those are sitting on Kenyan side. So IPPs, if you compare a new generation plant today from either Kenyan or IPPs, you will find the cost of production is not very different. Yeah, the only difference would be the cost of capital that they can access. Maybe they will get a loan at 0.2%. An IPP, at best, you'd get it at 5, 6, 7% in US dollar. So, yeah, that's where you get the difference.
If I take us back a little bit, you said our installed capacity is 3,800 megawatts.
Yes.
What does installed capacity mean?
It means we have invested in facilities that can generate power. So that's what is there. It doesn't necessarily mean that...
Uko na nyumba ya 3 bedroom.
Uko na nyumba ya 3 bedroom.
Lakini mko wangapi kwa nyumba?
Unaweza kuwa peke yako, unaweza kuwa sita. So it depends.
Okay.
But you have the 3-bedroom house.
Okay. Yeah. So 3,800 is our 3-bedroom house.
Yes.
How much are we consuming?
We are now consuming at peak 2,300. But just let me correct you first. 3,800 tunahesabu including captive power plants. So what people have on their rooftops. This 2,300 I'm talking about is just on the grid. So that 2,300, probably the best way to compare it ni compare na 3,000, about 3,200. So take out the roughly 600, which people have installed on their rooftops.
Okay.
So we are not counting that. So
about 3,200 if we were to talk about now proper grid capacity.
Yes.
3,200 megawatts.
Yes.
But we are consuming 2,300
at peak. Yes.
At peak megawatts. Okay. How much of that is Kenyan contributing?
That's what I was telling you. The 60%.
So it's 60%.
About 60% of that
is 60%
Kenyan.
of the installed capacity or 60% of our consumption?
Good angle actually. Yeah. It's 60% of what they actually produce. But in terms of installed, it's probably almost the same actually. 65, I would say. Kenyan is slightly more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where I'm heading with this question is to understand why we need you guys, IPPs, right?
Yeah.
Because if Kenyan is able to, if our installed grid capacity is 3,200 and we're only consuming 2,300, is Kenyan able to generate 2,300?
Now, there's some nuance. Kuna a bit of jargon into it. That 2,300 is just the peak as in when we all go
most.
home, everybody switches on their fridges and they're cooking, and some industries are still working. At peak, we get there. But sometime between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m.
Yeah.
At that time, all our solar is not generating. Of course, there's no sun, so the solar is out.
Yeah.
The wind, if it's a rainy day, then the wind also suffers quite a bit. So all of a sudden, you don't have, maybe about 500 megawatt is gone, is not available. So in spite of the fact that our peak is 300 and the installed is 200, at that time, you still don't have enough. And that's where now peaking plants, which are thermal plants, are switched on. They run on heavy fuel oil just to meet that demand. So globally, what is sort of a standard is to have between 15 and 30% of extra, you would say that. I think last year, if you guys were monitoring, the new CS, when he came in, he said, there's a day called a press, and he said we are at 4%, like we are at bare minimum. This 4%, we call it a reserve margin, should be between 15 and 30%. So if you have solar not available, wind, maybe it's raining, and unfortunately where the hydros are, if you have a drought or something, then the 800 from hydro can go all the way down to like 300. So we need, what I'm trying to say is, we need actually more installed capacity on the grid. At the moment, we are taking, as I said, 200 megawatt from Ethiopia. IPPs basically come in to do the investment that the government would have otherwise done. So if we were not there, then money would have to be taken away from maybe healthcare or from some other service to ensure that we have power.
Right.
So that's the role of IPPs.
I'm still on the cost bit, and sorry to take you back.
No problem.
But, and correct my math if I'm wrong,
Yeah.
KenGen sells power at about 5.3 shillings per kilowatt per hour. IPP is about 3 times that on average, right?
Not really. But I'm
trying to see the because you've given the reasons why for the difference in cost, but to justify a cost 3 times is a little bit it's quite steep.
Well, you see that 5 it's actually 5 USD, so that should be like maybe like 8 or something Kenya shilling. That cost is an average, and you've said it really well. It's an average cost, and it's basically heavy on hydro, on hydropower plants that were built a long time ago. That today I think they're producing at perhaps 2 shillings per kilowatt hour, something like that. And because they are hydro and they are base load, they get to be dispatched. They get a chance to produce power more often than what the other power plants would, like a peaking plant. So that comparison is normally based on amount of power produced versus total amount paid, and it doesn't. Amount paid? It's like, in power terms, you can be paid for the energy that you produce and also for availing the capacity. I always use this example of hiring a car. Okay. Like when you hire a car, you have the hiring fee. So like every day you're paying 15,000 a day. Whether you drive it or not, you'll pay that 15,000 a day. If you drive it, then you'll have to put fuel. So you'll pay a price for fuel. So if someone takes this car, let's say me and you, Janet, we hire a car differently, separately. I drive to Kutulo with my car, you just park yours. After 5 days, your cost per kilometer will be crazy high because you've only driven 5 kilometers from the hiring place to your house and parked it, and you're still paying 15,000 every day.
Exactly.
And I have driven a very long distance, and therefore my cost per kilometer will actually be much, much lower than you because I'm doing more kilometers. So in the same way, this comparison is based on that. You have hydro plants that are generating at a way cheaper cost because they have been there for maybe, I think there's even one from 1927. I don't know if it was already decommissioned, but the bulk of them are much older than 20 years. IPP plants are 20 years. It's a 20-year contract. After 20 years, you're out, you decommission. So within those 20 years, you have to recover all your costs. But if you had, let's say, a 50-year-old plant, then you can tell that the per unit cost, based on you recovering your cost over a longer period, will be lower. So, and if you dispatch that more, if you are given more chance to generate, then of course you sell more units, and then your per unit, as the driving thing I was talking about, becomes lower. So I don't know if we are...
We're still trying to look at the cost of it.
I'm still trying to figure out how to make power cheaper, basically, in a way that benefits me. I wouldn't be too bothered if IPPs ran longer contracts, if we had less of them producing more. I think there has to be ways, right, to lower the cost of power from IPPs specifically, because KenGen isn't here to talk about.
No, I think if we are now talking about just lowering the cost of power, there are ways to do it. One of them is competitive procurement. So which it means all of us want to build a power plant. We only have, let's say, 50 megawatt available. All of you bid, and we undercut each other, and we come up with the lowest cost. That is world over. That is the best practice to do it. We had started. Not yet. We had started with what we call the feed-in tariff. There's a reason for it. Okay. So when an industry is young, you do what we call a feed-in tariff. So you're trying to attract investors to come into the market. So you give them some sort of a assured price for the power that they will sell. And this is what the feed-in tariff system basically does. And with that, we got a lot of guys. Kenya attracted a lot of investors to come into the market, and they've built the wind farms, the solar farms you're seeing are because of this feed-in tariff. Now, once the investors have confidence in the market, now you have quite a lot of them attracted, and now you do a competitive process to kind of weed them out, to sieve them out and find whatever you're looking for, price point, gender if you want, or youth empowerment and stuff. You put all these criteria in the bid documents, and then people compete, and whoever is cheapest according to your criteria gets to build. So that's how you will reduce the cost. And of course, another major one is around stability of policy, stability of both financial and just energy policy. Basically, investors, the way they kind of evaluate risk, when things are moving a lot, every time you have a new tax thing, you have a new this thing, you have so many changes, then the market is seen as risky. If you see it as risky, you price your loan to build the power plant a bit higher, and that now also increases the cost eventually. So we need to manage how we kind of change or stabilize our financial taxation policy, our energy policies, and then at the same time run a very competitive process. In the ideal sense, in the ideal, you want to have a sort of stock market operation of the power system. This is something that Kenya is already in the process of doing. We call it a wholesale electricity market, where now I will build my power plant, Janet will have a manufacturing facility, and Mariam has, and then we meet at the stock exchange one day in advance, and we say, tomorrow I am able to produce this power at this price, and you bid that you want it at that price, and Janet at another price, and somewhere the market gives us a place where the lines meet, economics. And that point is where we sell the power. Now that is ideal. When we have a very mature market with full competition all over the place, then we will go into such a system.
Time for a break. Do you understand what we're talking about? We're talking about the cost of power and just basically starting to understand our power sector. So we have various people and entities that are contributing to our power sector. There is, of course, KenGen that is producing power through hydro dams and the geothermal, and they also have thermal, right?
Yes,
they also have wind. Ule Angong, the wind near KenGen. They also have solar in some areas. Do they not?
No, it's REREC.
It's other entities like REREC that have solar, a big solar farm. And then there are IPPs. Those are the ones that have been branded as evil. And they are charging us, high cost of power because they're doing diesel, doing it. Okay. And then there are those who are doing their small power in their own domestic grids, off-grid. All those, it's power. Now, the question is, how do we bring the cost of power down? And that's why we invited George Aluru, who is the CEO of the Electricity Sector Association of Kenya, to take us through this and tell us what is it that, as an association, they're proposing to government on taxation, on policy and everything to lower the cost of power. At 7:30, it's time for us to take that break. We'll be back shortly. Send your questions on YouTube and Facebook and X, everywhere.
Issue. I'll take note now.
It's Jali Jano.
Day at a time.
We love you irregardless.
Irregardless.
We continue our conversation with George Aluru on electricity matters. Uko na maswali mengi. What are people saying? Are there some comments and questions coming? As they come, we'll ask you.
Yes,
Okay?
yes, they'll.
But
No, swali yangu ilikuwa, yeah, we're still on how to lower the cost of power, and you gave us some ideas, competitive bidding, etc. The question is, and you may not be the one who wants to answer this, right? It will benefit Kenya to increase KenGen's capacity as opposed to relying on IPPs, no?
No, I think, again, remember KenGen is sort of state-backed. So you increase capacity of KenGen, you're taking away
resources.
Yeah, I don't want to get into that controversy. But if you do that, then it means you're taking money away from any other social or any other thing that government does. So government has a pool of funds, and these funds are allocated to energy, to this, to that, to that. If you increase more on the KenGen side, then you will for sure take away money from other things. Private sector comes in.
You could take away money
Yeah.
from.
I was going to say,
I want to
from-
go there, George.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
KenGen is listed on the NSC,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
KenGen can do a share issue, right? Where we investors can give them more money. So, yeah. Of course, that will require also the government also to put
chip in,
some money,
yeah.
to chip in some money. Otherwise, it
75% or
dilutes
something, yeah?
its shareholding.
Exactly, yeah.
But Nisawa, you see, they can collect money from taxes and from the investors and have a pool of cash with which to invest into more power.
No, I think let's step back kidogo and I give you like one fact. The cheapest geothermal running on the grid right now is an IPP plant. It was commissioned, I think, 2 years ago. So it doesn't necessarily mean you will always have the cheapest power from KenGen.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have to balance how much we want to leverage on KenGen and also attract foreign direct investment and be able to basically keep KenGen on its toes by having competitors who do something similar. The comparison, again, is based on historical costs that they had already, actually the state, the Kenyan government, before KenGen, these power plants were already built. So you take out all those and just use whatever has come after, and what is still within 20 years, you will find there's not a very big difference between the cost of IPPs and KenGen. Now we just need to make sure that process of onboarding new power plants is as efficient as possible, so that we achieve lower prices, and we again also ensure we still have competition.
Yeah.
What I don't want us to do is to fall back into a situation where we just have one generator.
A monopoly.
I think you guys can remember, probably not Mariam, but
Second time in a week. They just come for me. I went to a business, I drink my tea, I come to work, they come for me.
I'm here to fix the
in the
issue
2000s, in the 2000s, we had serious blackouts.
Yeah.
We basically kuna soma kwa gazeti. You take the newspaper and figure out on Wednesday, Thursday, and
Which
Friday we
area,
won't have.
when, exactly.
Yeah, that is
was
the
the
genesis of IPPs. Because government didn't have enough money to invest. Now we were in a place where we
stepped
have
into that
a
gap,
shortage.
yeah.
So imagine you go to the newspaper and you're told, sasa kwenu 8 hours, amna stima on Wednesday,
But
Thursday, and Friday.
This happened.
It's just that it's not proper
not as-
rationing.
Yeah.
But your maintenance.
Yeah.
You go to the Kenya Power
in those
Twitter
days,
page.
there was proper rationing, which tells you that Nyinyi wote Nairobi from 8 to 4 p.m.
Yeah.
No
Mjipange.
steamer. Mjipange. And that's what we see in South Africa as well.
Yeah.
Maybe what I also want to probably bring to light, there's a report from EPRA. They've published some statistics for last year. And such things, what you're talking about is also kind of being measured, like how long your blackouts last, how fast do they restore it, in a month, how many hours do you have where you don't have power, and their targets, which the utility Kenya Power is actually pushed to achieve. So I think as Kenyans, it's upon us to actually review such reports and see how things are working and push whoever needs to do whatever they need to do to ensure you have your 24-hour power at a quality that you can do whatever you want. See, you have power and it's a
And
low
you have
voltage.
to plan around it. So you've spoken to the fact that, okay, IPPs are there to hold, Kengen, make sure that they're on their toes, etc. Again, I'm just thinking of the person who doesn't want to have to pay so much. I just want to try and break down the technicalities of why ESSAC exists, and then compare it to, okay, what does that mean for my cost of electricity? I think during the break we were talking about using an example of, what was it, 1,000
Yes.
1,000 units, was it?
Which can do 1,000 Kenya shillings.
1,000 Kenya shillings, yeah.
Or is that easy?
Cost per
I
unit.
think the easiest one, and it's actually available online. If you go on the EPRA website, you can download the biannual statistics report, which gives you stats from July to December 2024. And within it, there's a table there where they're actually discussing for DC3. This is like you consume more than 100 units per month, which is most of the, I would say, middle income people in Nairobi would be consuming about more than 100 units per month. And there, as of December 2024, the total amount you paid was 28 bob for 1 unit. And in that 28 bob, there's 19.8, which is the base tariff. I'll discuss a bit more about it. And then there's also pass-through costs, which is about 4.96. And taxes and levies, another 4.67. So we have VAT. Let me just scroll back a bit.
Tuanze tena.
Yeah, tuanze tena sasa kwa pass-through.
1 unit
1 unit, 28 bob.
is equals 28 shillings. Okay.
And then kwa hiyo 1 unit, the base tariff, which is the cost of generating, transmitting, distributing. So you get the power from the generator, you push it onto Ketraco. Ketraco pushes it to Kenya Power. Then Kenya Power brings it to your house. Plus also the whatever return that Kenya Power needs to earn for doing the job. Or actually, not just Kenya Power. All these
Even
people in the sector, including the IPPs. That comes to 19.08.
Okay.
Then you have your pass-through costs.
Pass-through costs.
Yeah. Basically, these are costs for producing the power that are not in Kenya Power books. They don't earn anything from it, nor do the IPPs. So let's say if it's an adjustment to inflation, when the Kenya shilling fluctuates, that's passed through. When we need to use fuel oil to generate electricity, the cost of the oil itself is passed through. And then also inflation, whenever there's an adjustment to inflation, that cost of inflation is passed through.
Okay.
So all that is passed through means it's coming to me.
It goes to the consumer. It's passing through to the consumer.
It's passing through to me.
Passing through to the consumer.
To the consumer.
How much is that?
That is about 4.96. As of, I'm using December numbers.
Okay.
December 2024. These numbers vary every month because you can imagine the Kenya shilling, inflation, fuel, all these things change. So if you are keen, if you look at the Kenya Gazette every month, they actually publish what happened that month. Okay. But this report gives you a good summary.
Okay.
Yeah.
What other cost is there?
Taxes and levies.
Taxes and levies.
In December was 4.67.
4.67?
Yes, 4.67.
How many taxes and levies are we talking about here?
This is VAT, mostly VAT. And then also you have your...
Are we paying EPRA?
Yes, there's some levy for EPRA, for WRA, the Water Resources Authority. Then the others are inflation adjustment. These are not levies, adjustments. And then also you have the Forex adjustment and the fuel energy cost or charge.
Okay.
So again, now if we go a bit deeper, we find that in December, the fuel energy charge was 3.57. The Forex
part of the pass-through
of the 4.67
in taxes and levies. Okay.
So then you have the Forex adjustment of 1.014, inflation 0.38, and the WRA levy was 0.01. So that's how then you break it down. So to talk about reduction of the cost of power, you have to now look at all these things.
So the total, open calculator, is 28 plus 19.08 plus...
No. 28 is the total.
Is the total?
Yes.
Oh, and the total
breaking down.
is based on
the 19,
19
we
plus
jumped into the pass-through
plus
cost.
4.67.
Yeah.
I see.
So it's
that's
28 per unit.
That's why it's 28 bob.
Yeah. But
This
thing
needs to come to 12 bob. Sindio, Mariam?
Yeah.
Ideally, you want it to go as low as possible.
Tuanze na hii base tariff, which is the big elephant in the room. How can this elephant be slaughtered? This base tariff, which is the profit margins for everybody in the value chain. Can they take a lower profit?
No, I think the profit in terms of the electricity sector.
Kidogo for long.
Think long game.
Just chukua tu kidogo.
Yeah.
Lakini for long.
Is it possible though? It's valid. Like that's where the crux of it is.
Within certain,
that.
there are technical limits. Like if a power plant is built to last for 30 years, you can't stretch it to 50 years. That's why you'll be paying much more.
Okay.
But within those limits, yes, you can stretch. Like from 20, if a power plant is able to produce for 30 years, if you stretch it for an extra 10 years, then they can reduce how much you're actually getting over the year.
Okay.
Generally, Kenya mnasema.
Yeah.
But there are limits, as I said. For hydro, and again, that's why Kenyan is always in a disfavorable position. Hydro dam, once you do the civil works, nini, utengeneza hizo tunnels and turbines and nini, they last for 50, 100 years. So you just come and do some small O&M, change a few things, and you keep running. So the longer we can run our power plants, the better for us.
So
both
actually,
KenGen and IPPs.
Can we break down this base tariff? The way we've broken down the taxes and levies and told us these are the elements.
Yeah.
Break down this base tariff. This 19 bob is a lot. Hii mambo ni kuongea. Tuone mahali tunasaidiana.
Because I don't want to be the one I have to rely on
EPRA,
official statistics from EPRA.
Yeah.
On this particular one, I don't have a breakdown, but as I said, kuna generation cost, kuna cost of transmission, cost of distribution, and then also the margins. Of course, the biggest cost there would be the cost of generation. Roughly, that should be maybe like 10, 11 bob of the 19 is cost of generation. Yeah.
And that can't come down.
It can, but it's not like an instant reduction. It takes time. So your power plant will have at least 20-year contracts. Over those 20 years, the price is more or less locked. So as you bring in new power plants, so some are retiring, new ones are coming in, old ones are retiring. Now the ones that are coming in, we must be very aggressive with the pricing so that we reduce the average cost of the generation fleet. And that's where I was talking about your competitive procurement, your idea of a longer contract. Instead of 20, give 30, and then have a lower price, they recover over a longer period. These kind of ideas. And also actually now we are moving into a situation where we can trade in the Eastern African power pool. You can buy power from Ethiopia. So all these elements, including captive power plants. So again, stepping back again, what we want is power to the consumer.
Right.
It's not necessarily coming from the grid. So we want the consumer to have enough power to do their whatever the manufacturing or consumption that they do. So avail all sorts of options to the consumer. So the consumer can buy from the grid, from Kenya Power. The consumer can have their own captive power generation facility. The consumer at a later stage can be able to buy even from across our borders, from Ethiopia, from Uganda, from Tanzania, if they're running a cheaper generation fleet, which is mostly hydro, like the Ethiopians. All these countries I've mentioned, the bulk of their generation is huge hydro dams. So when the consumer has all these different options, then you're able to kind of better manage your own cost of electricity, as we also do all these competitive things that I'm talking of on the grid. So in my view, the best way to handle this is to avail many options to consumers. We as the association, we as I said, we have this captive power side of us, where people are investing in solar, in hydro that is captive. You install it close to your facility. We actually have a conference in April, 16th and 17th, just focusing on this particular topic, where we really want to encourage the view from the industry is that the consumer being at the center, the consumer is given all these options. So as we work out our grid issues, we also open that they can do some self-generation. They can also buy from outside Kenya if necessary. And then there's also this thing we call wheeling, where I, George, build a power plant at point X, and Mariam at point Y can actually buy the power directly from me through the, and we pay whether it's Ketraco or Kenya Power, whoever has the lines, we pay them to transport the power from this point to that point. So when the consumer has all these options,
Cutting out the
then you're,
middleman.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that, but
Sora.
sort of.
Is there any pushback against some of these ideas? And these are the ideas that you're saying you're bringing to the conference.
Yeah, these are the ideas that are in the conference. So they have been also, if you follow us, you'll find we do a lot of these conversations, both online, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube. We talk a lot about this. The regulator, EPRA, has also been developing regulations around all these things I'm talking about. So the industry is actually moving in a direction towards what I was calling the ideal, the wholesale market, the kind of going to the stock exchange to buy electricity. So all these things I've talked about are actually leading us in that direction. Of course, there's always pushback to the extent that we have invested, public side, we have invested on whether it's Kenyan or Kenya Power or Ketraco, all these things, all these state agencies. And if you then like suddenly open up, then there's a feeling that that investment will be lost. But again, I would really want to center the thinking around, we are all targeted at the consumer. If the consumer is able to choose, if you give them more choice, then they are likely to end up with lower costs, or at least manage it better. And cost is not the only issue. So reliability, availability, we've talked about it.
That's a bigger.
That is even much bigger. You don't want to be, like in a country, there's some countries where you find power, it could even be $2 US. So, okay, that's like maybe 4 bob per unit. But then it's never there. Yeah, so what's the use of it being 4 bob and it's never available?
Just before, because we're almost running out of time, could IPPs take a cut and continue to supply power genuinely? Yes or no? Now,
that question is difficult to answer because IPP is not one organization. And then all these contracts are very unique. So you'd have to step into... No.
So each contract is negotiated separately.
Each contract is negotiated separately. It has more or less separate terms. There may be some that can concede something, others can't because they're at the margin completely.
Is it a good thing to have separate contracts?
Best case scenario, no. It's better to have one standardized contract. So that competitive process that I was talking about needs you to have standardized contracts. So a standard PPA, standard government, the government guarantees that are issued. Like if something happens, government will step in. They have to be standardized. And then people bid on these standardized documents and then give you a power price. So, but as I said, we were coming from a place where we had no power. 2000. Then we needed to onboard. Then we needed now more investors to come in as renewable energy. So then you have the feed-in tariff process that basically you have to talk bilaterally between the contracting parties and agree on terms. So that's how the contracts ended up not being the same. But it's not that it was bad. At that time, that is what was available to us. But now as we are moving towards more competition, standardization is a must. And then we put it all to like an open competition.
As a CEO, you know you're the spokesman, so I've got to ask you this question. How do you debunk this issue that's in the public, that this is where cartels thrive? Because of these contracts and because of the sort of opaque nature of how IPPs are operating and their relationship with us?
Well, I think what we are doing here today first is a good first step. We need to be a bit more in the public, explaining stuff, explaining how these things work. But in a more, I will keep coming back to this competition thing. In the competitive process, you will have everything downloadable. You have the standard contract, you have the standard this, standard that. Any Kenyan can go and download. And then you compete over the price. And then the way you've bid is shown. So everybody knows this guy bid this much, this other one bid this much, and this other guy won because of this and that. The criteria for selection is there. So with that also...
I wanted to ask, so the attempts that have been made even by Parliament to look at, these contracts of IPPs and pushing for a renegotiation, are we stuck? Are we saying that we cannot reopen, just to answer Mariam's question as well, we cannot reopen some of these contracts? We are stuck with them. It's a 27-year contract. You're on year 7. You have 20 to go.
Yeah, well, what you don't want to do is also break into signed contracts, because now you lose credibility, which means more, I perceive you as risky. So if I'm building the next plant, I will put a premium that, hey, I'm signing this thing for 20 years, but Eric is likely to open it up at year 13, therefore I will charge higher. You lose the confidence of investors by doing that. I would really
We are
want...
doing two things here at the same time, George. We are heading towards a standardized contract. So future investors will come and find a standardized bidding contract. These ones who have invested, we are telling them, you are our brothers, you are helping our people. Let's reopen this thing and see where can we make concessions.
Let's renegotiate.
I mean, discussions are continuously being had, and as I said, it has to be like per contract. You can't have a blanket statement around it. So allow me to end at that, to just leave it there.
No, you can't end. Is the association open or not open?
The association doesn't have the association doesn't have a contract.
As a voice of the industry, right? Are you open or not open to a renegotiation of current IPP contracts?
My advice from the association side is that we should not touch the existing contracts. We should actually focus on whatever we are bringing in. That one will give us more punch. Because if we do it right, then we have a lower price on average. But if we step into contracts now, then
George,
I can almost guarantee you.
No,
I'm telling you the truth. The truth is...
No, they're not past, they're present. You're choosing your members over consumers.
No, if we are talking about consumers, remember that 28 bob. Yes. There are many places we can today if you say no VAT on power, boom, 16% is gone. But do we want to start talking about that also? Yeah, there are many areas you can actually target.
No one wants to concede, is what I'm getting. Because
the government will tell you, now if I don't take VAT, how am I going to build your roads? How am I going to put transmission lines? Anyway, George, thank you for joining us. We'll have more conversations with you. George Aluru is the CEO of the Electricity Sector Association of Kenya. He's been our guest. In the next hour, we talk about money and mental health. Wairimo Wahome is a wellness coach. She'll be joining us shortly. It's 8 a.m. Good morning.